Hi, everyone. My name is Lilia Perez. I'm the grants manager for Arts Mid-Hudson, and we're here today to talk about the 2024 Dutchess Partners in the Arts program, which we are so grateful is supported by Dutchess Tourism and the Office of the County Executive. Again, I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the grants and programs manager, and Vanessa Capuccio-Bear is our outreach administrative assistant. We're both working on the grants team this year, and you can reach both of us at grants@artsmidhudson.org if you have any questions about this program. That is really the best way and fastest way to reach us. But if you would prefer to give us a phone call, please do, and you can call 845-454-3222, and feel free to leave an extension, and a message with extension 11 if we're not in the office when you call. If you start working with one of us, you might continue working with us throughout, or you might hear from both of us if you're asking questions during the process. Today, we're going to go over the purpose of Dutchess Partners in the Arts, why this program exists, and what we're trying to achieve. Go over important dates for this year. We'll discuss the guidelines and application materials, and some tips for submitting an application for funding. This session that if you're here today, you're seeing it live in Zoom. If you're watching it on YouTube, you're watching the recording. We also have Q&A sessions, which are really for the purpose of just asking your questions, hearing others' questions, and getting answers. Just kind of a more informal session to discuss the program. If you're here today, you're already signed up to receive reminders for this Q&A session. And it's the exact same Zoom information, Zoom access information you use today. If you're watching and you sign up for one of these Q&A sessions, it'll be the same Zoom access link every single time. There's an RSVP link on our website at artsmidhudson.org/Dutchess-Partners-in-the-Arts. And you can find that. I'll later in the session go to our website and show you where you can find all of the materials. But once you RSVP there, you'll receive reminders weekly before each Q&A session. And you're welcome to attend one or multiple, whatever you need during the process. If there are any additional accommodations that we can provide to facilitate your participation in this project, please contact us. These include if you need translation services, large text documents, technical support, in addition to all of the grant assistance that we offer, which are things like, obviously going through any specific questions you have about the guidelines or application, brainstorming ideas, strategizing together, and receiving feedback on a draft and/or budget. So we're happy to review your draft and give you feedback over the phone. We can also check a budget really quickly. So if you would like us to take a look at your budget, that's something we really encourage you to send in so we can give you a little feedback on. To make an appointment, you can use the link on our website. It's artsmidhudson.youcanbook.me. You'll see a calendar pop up that'll allow you to select a time and date that works for you. If you email us at grants@artsmidhudson.org or you receive an email from that address, you'll see that there's a direct link to this in the signature of that email every time. So as I'm alluding to, we offer a ton of free technical assistance. I like to tell people it's a really good way to workshop your ideas and get feedback for free. And then you can use that to submit to our program and use that proposal to submit to any other program as well. So free and varied assistance available will help you put together your project proposal or initiative proposal. It's also a great way to get some networking assistance. So we obviously talk to a lot of people in the region and can maybe help you make connections with groups or individual artists you're trying to reach, or put you onto someone who you're not really aware of or a group you're not aware of yet, and just get some helpful feedback about your proposal. This is, a public program that we're administering. And so there are a lot of eligibility criteria and specific tips that we can offer. So I really recommend you all take advantage of this because it's a way to get kind of an inside look at the process and get some unfiltered suggestions about how to put in a strong proposal. Okay, so getting into the purpose, this funding comes, as I said, through a partnership with the Office of the County Executive and Dutchess Tourism. We're pleased to partner with arts organizations to implement arts and cultural offerings, and we seek partners that have a history of achievement in the arts, good management, stable finances, and self-sustaining programs with the potential to make a measurable impact. Some goals for our program. I like to say that these goals are what Arts Mid-Hudson and our partners are trying to achieve as a whole. We don't expect any one project to meet these goals, but I think it's really good to think about how your project might align with one of these goals, and you can reference that in your application. So first, for programmatic support, we're seeking to support the arts and cultural programming in Dutchess County as a means of attracting visitors to our region. So this funding is coming from Dutchess Tourism. There is a very specific focus on events that are going to generate tourism, promote people traveling to Dutchess County, maybe staying the weekend or, traveling from neighboring counties, or even just promoting people moving within the county and traveling maybe to the other end, right? To engage Dutchess County residents in high quality arts and cultural programming. So of course, we're trying to serve Dutchess County residents as well. Fund arts partners with the ability to report reliable statistics, marketing results, and accurate outcomes. This program requires quarterly reporting and a final report. So quarterly, we're seeking statistics on numbers served by region or zip code, and revenue generated from any events that occurred, and just the total number of events that occurred. It's really important that we're able to gather these on a quarterly basis. So we're really looking for applicants who have demonstrated that they have some system in place where they're going to be able to track this, and report back on it. And that, when you're applying to this, you understand this will be the expectation if you are to receive funds. For capacity building initiatives, which is the second, there are two really funding tracks within this overall program, both programmatic support and capacity building. So for capacity building initiatives, we're seeking to support nonprofit arts organizations in Dutchess County in their efforts to grow, expand, or improve their work, and positively impact the arts and cultural scene of Dutchess County by strengthening established arts organizations which benefit residents and visitors. So really, through our capacity building initiatives, we're looking for applications from arts and cultural organizations who are interested in expanding what they're able to do, growing what they're able to do, and strengthening their organization, find a way to better meet their mission. And we're interested in doing this so that we can really strengthen our existing arts and cultural resources and assets in Dutchess County, make sure they continue to thrive and grow, and continue to see Dutchess County as an attractive place to visit and live for arts and cultural offerings. Okay, so some important dates for this program. The deadline is Thursday, April 4th, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. So it'll close just before it becomes April 5th. You're likely to receive grant notification in May of this year, but we put TBD just because, as you'll hear me talk about in a bit, our review process relies on volunteers. So that's the only complicating factor, is if we have a little scheduling issue and it takes a little bit longer. But I think given our deadline, we are very likely to see grant notification in May. Funded projects must occur from January 1st of this year to December 31st of this year. So for that reason, yes, we can fund retroactively. If there's anything that occurred before you're submitting the application or around the time you're submitting the application, it is still eligible. For those, I would give a little bit, first of all, if you're in that situation where you're submitting for something that's already occurred or is kind of occurring as you are submitting, I recommend touching base with us so we can just talk that through and make sure you're framing your application very clearly to the panel. But I would say if the project is totally complete, the panel is definitely going to be expecting documentation of that event and talking about that event as if, reporting on how it went and what the success of it was. And maybe you just need to get some additional funding to pay some artists that you weren't able to pay at the level you wanted to, for example. And it's also totally appropriate to have maybe a schedule of events or an annual schedule of events where you're applying for 10 concerts maybe, and 2 of them have already occurred, right? Then you want to be very clear talking about those that have already occurred, and it actually gives you a great opportunity to talk about their success. Okay, so I'm going to get into talking specifically about capacity building initiatives now, and run through eligibility for capacity building initiatives and kind of what will make a strong proposal for this category. So capacity building initiatives are intended to help nonprofit organizations, arts organizations, more effectively, and better meet their mission. Initiatives may create a new area of work, develop new strategies, or enhance current programming in a significant manner. Applicants may submit one application for each category: capacity building and programmatic support. So if your organization is eligible for both categories, and we'll run through eligibility in a moment, you are welcome to submit one application to both. I would really strongly, if you are eligible for capacity building initiative, maybe you're here to hear about programmatic support. I would really strongly recommend our arts and cultural organizations in Dutchess County apply to this, because we've seen a lower level of applications in the past few years. And I think there's definitely room for more applications in the pool. So I think it's a good year to apply for this program. And that being said, you'll see when we talk about eligibility, there are some applicants who are really only going to be eligible for one. But if you're eligible for both, I really recommend pursuing both. So some key details for this program: the funding amount funding requests can range from $2,500 to $11,000. There is no cash match required. So that means you can request anywhere within that range, and the panel may grant your full request amount or may grant an amount that is less than the amount you requested. Anyone watching who just recently applied to our statewide community regrants programs, where we have set funding amounts, that is not the case for Dutchess Partners in the Arts. It is ranged funding, so you may receive what you request, you may receive less. We cannot give you more than you asked for, though. There is no cash match required. So if you're requesting $11,000 and your full budget is $11,000, that is perfectly fine. Your full budget for the initiative. Established nonprofit arts organizations or artistic programs that have been in existence for 3 or more years and have a record of success are eligible and encouraged to apply for funding. So I'll add to that when we're saying a nonprofit arts organization, I would actually add to that, it should really say arts and or cultural organization. And the way that we determine that is by looking at the organization's mission. In your organization mission, it should clearly state that there is a primary focus on either arts or culture. If that's the case and it's clear within the organization's mission, then you're eligible. If you have any concerns or questions, or you feel that your organization is in a gray area, then please send us an email to grants@artsmidhudson.org. That's a good thing for us to have eyes on. I would recommend just including your organization's mission statement in the email for us to look at, give you some feedback. All expressive artistic disciplines are eligible, including visual, performing, written, digital, traditional, and experimental mediums. So any arts or cultural organization working in any of those or all of those mediums is eligible. Some more about eligibility. So all applicants must be a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization, which identifies arts and or cultural services as a primary activity in the organization's mission. Nonprofit arts organizations must be incorporated in Dutchess County or have a long-term lease or own a building in Dutchess County. So if maybe you're incorporated somewhere else, but if you do have a legal address or own a building, you have a space that people can go to in Dutchess County, then you're eligible. Applicants must supply proof of nonprofit status with your application. Organizations must have at least 3 years of programming history in order to apply for funding. This means maybe you just got incorporated in 2024 in January, but you had been doing programming consistently as an unincorporated group since 2021 or 2020. I would say then, as long as it's been 3 years of doing programming history, you're eligible, even if your nonprofit status is not at least 3 years old. All nonprofits applying must have a board of directors and a board-approved non-discrimination policy. We don't ask for the non-discrimination policy on the application. Once you apply, we look through. We're doing this right now for our other program. We keep all of those on file from our previous applicants. And if you applied to us previously within the past couple of years, we'll have it. If not, we'll reach out to you after the application has been submitted to request proof of your non-discrimination policy. All right, who's ineligible for capacity building initiatives in Dutchess Partners in the Arts? First of all, individuals and unincorporated groups. This is only eligible to nonprofit organizations, arts or cultural organizations, public school districts, their components, 2- and 4-year public universities and colleges, as well as their supporting foundations. So like if there's a foundation for a public university, that would not be eligible. New York State agencies and departments, including SUNY schools and county level government agencies and departments. Entities incorporated as for-profit, including LLCs, are not eligible. Libraries and social service organizations are not eligible. Units of government, government agencies, nonprofits incorporated outside Dutchess County who do not own a building or have a long-term lease in Dutchess County, and organizations or groups that have not submitted the requisite reports on prior funded activities to Arts Mid-Hudson. That last one I'll highlight to say, if we for this program or for any of our other programs, if there's an outstanding final report due or quarterly report due, you will not be eligible if that is not submitted by the time you submit your application, or after the fact. We do a little digging to see if there's anyone who's applied who has an outstanding application. We'll give you another final deadline, and that will really be the last chance for you to get it in to still be considered eligible for this run. If you are concerned about this or just want to double check that you're all up to date, just send us an email to grants@artsmidhudson.org, and Vanessa and I can check it. All right. Now we're going to get talking more about the initiative itself. So what are the types of capacity building initiatives that are eligible? And I'll start by saying capacity building initiatives is a very broad category, and we're very open to creative approaches to what is going to be a capacity building initiative for your organization. A general warning, however, is I don't recommend applications that read like there's a list of a few different things. It should really still be focused as one initiative that might have multiple types of funding requests within it, different parts that make up a whole clear focused initiative. But even though I'm about to list a whole bunch of options, doesn't mean necessarily you could go for all of these within one application. Sometimes when it's spread a little too thin, it starts to look like general operating support, which this program is not. This is for capacity building initiatives, things that are going to grow or expand what you're already doing, not funding what you should already be doing or have already been doing. All right, so types of capacity building initiatives: strategic planning or board development. So maybe like consultant fees associated with that, or any other fees associated with doing those processes. Diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion training for staff, board, or volunteers. New or expanded staff positions. This is a very popular request for capacity building initiatives. So either hiring a new staff person or expanding someone's hours or their responsibilities. I have another slide where I'll give some more tips about that, so I'll save that one for then. Capital improvements, technology, website, and or other equipment upgrades. So buying new equipment, buying new software, making upgrades to your facilities, these or your website. These are all eligible. Audience, website, or marketing plan development. So putting in place a new audience or marketing development program or approach plan, but it really should not be for a specific program. Maybe it's a new audience development or marketing program promoting the organization or the cultural group as a whole, and not necessarily for a series of events, because that would really make it more programmatic support and not capacity building. And then any other activities which would improve the organization's ability to produce excellent arts and or cultural programming for residents and visitors to Dutchess County. I want to say a word also on inclusion through capacity building initiatives. So I would ask all of you, if you have a moment, you can take a look at our diversity, equity, and accessibility and inclusion statement on our website. We go into a lot of detail talking about how we approach our programs and what we're trying to achieve as an organization, especially through our funding programs. And really one of our main goals is we're striving towards broad inclusion and true access to arts and cultural programming for all in our region and in Dutchess County in this case. And so this is really an opportunity with a capacity building initiative for your organization to think about how you can expand access how you can expand inclusion into your programs, and that this is a time maybe that you would be seeking input on what would be most valuable to the community you're trying to serve or striving to serve. So I'll read this from the guidelines. Capacity building initiatives are wide-ranging and present opportunities for an organization to be more inclusive. Arts Mid-Hudson encourages thoughtful outreach to all groups in our region and efforts to seek input from as many points of view when undertaking capacity building initiatives. This includes specific outreach to historically underserved audiences. These are groups who may have limited access to arts programs, services, or resources due to location, race, economic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, religion, disability, or other factors. And some groups underserved by the arts in our region may include Black, Latino, Latinx, Latine, Indigenous, Asian, people of color, LGBTQIA+, disabled, elder, youth, rural, and low-income audiences. And so I think when we're thinking about inclusion and access, it would be a very huge undertaking for an organization to seek a capacity building initiative that would truly expand access to all of these groups. But you might, through research, through community conversation, through talking with your board and staff and volunteers, come to understand what are some high need groups that you feel it is really achievable for your organization to expand access to or expand inclusion of individuals from that group. And focusing a capacity building initiative in that way, instead of a generalized approach, which may, based on experience with sitting on a lot of review panels, may not seem as achievable if it's too broad and generalized. And if you have any questions on this, this is a really great thing for us to discuss in a one-on-one appointment or on one of the Q&A sessions. And if you're here watching today, I'll stick around at the end for questions so that, if there's any general questions, I can answer them then. Okay. That slide I was talking about, where I have some tips about new or expanded staff positions. So these are just some things you might want to consider when you're putting together a proposal for an expanded or new staff position. You'll see on our capacity building initiative application that it is a little bit broad because there are so many different types of capacity building initiatives. It's hard to have questions tailor-made to each type. So we tend to keep it a little bit more broad and let you fill in the details. You'll see, though, for staff positions, there are some specific questions that you're going to be asked that will help us make sure we gather this information. But some things you'll want to make sure are included somewhere in your proposal. Make a case for why this hire is important to the organization now. So the timeliness of this hire, how does it make sense with the trajectory of the organization, what you're focused on achieving, where you are within your strategic plan, for example, or just what your needs are at this time. Consider how your constituents will benefit from this hire or how you might be able to expand your audience. So for any capacity building initiative, I really recommend it's thinking about, it's going to strengthen your organization. And then what's the ripple effect beyond your organization into the community where the impact is felt for the people that you're serving. And so say you're like, we really need to hire an administrative assistant because we need somebody to really help with data entry and managing our database, doing some work in our database and greeting people. And, that impact is going to be felt in terms of lessening the burden on other staff members working in other areas, enabling them to work, streamline their work, focus their work on the areas that are most important to what their responsibilities are. And so I'm thinking about what will this really mean for your organization, and then how, if everybody, say you have a new administrative assistant and the rest of your staff is kind of freed up some responsibilities, what then can they do differently? What new programs can you launch? How is the organization going to run better and therefore better serve the public? How will the job be posted? There will be a specific question asking about this. Actually, it's not a question we get too often, but it is something that comes up a lot during the review process, which is if it's better to have the individual you're going to hire already identified or go in not having them identified. I would say this one kind of depends on the panel, each panelist, and what their preferences and what the circumstances of the entire initiative are. But if you have them already identified and they're a really clear fit and you're able to really, show their CV and their resume, and that, that might be a good benefit the application. It could also be a great benefit to say, this is going to be open. This is all the places it's going to be posted. We're really trying to get a new person in here and like find new talent and kind of making it a case for that. So just like whichever way you're going, try to tout the benefits of that choice. But if you don't know who they are, then you should definitely be very clear about where it'll be posted and what you're looking for in the candidate. What will this new staff accomplish? What are their new responsibilities going to be? If they are a existing staff person, how will their responsibilities change? What will the new tasks be? And if it is a new position or expanding their hours, talking about how that will be sustained beyond the scope of this capacity building initiative, or making it clear that it's maybe a one-time consultancy or a temporary job. Some tips for technology and equipment upgrades. So first, really recommend explaining the organization or staff's capacity to use and maintain the new technology or equipment, making it clear how you're planning, who's going to be the person that's responsible for that equipment on staff or on the board, and who has the expertise to make sure it's well utilized and a good investment. Consider accessibility. So, if you're making a technology or equipment upgrade, consider if it can also be something that's allowing you to be more accessible or inclusive in your programming. Consider if you need a customized solution, which may be more costly, or identify an off-the-shelf alternative, and be clear about why that approach is best for your organization's needs. So if you're like, we shopped around about doing a customized donor management system, and we think it would be a lot more cost-effective and streamlined and have better support if we went, going with this specific off-the-shelf alternative, this company. Or saying, we looked around at those off-the-shelf options. They don't fit our needs. This is why, and this is why we're going with this customized approach. Talk about the benefits to the organization or audience, and that's clearly defined. Again, what is the ripple effect beyond the organization? If you, for example, get better sound equipment in your theater, and what is that? Is that going to enable you to have a higher quality shows being shown? Are you hoping that you're going to, promote this new sound system in your theater and that it will bring in new audiences? Whatever it's going to be, think about what's the impact going to be beyond the organization. And then also realistic about the lifespan of the new equipment and how long you expect it to last you. All right, and then some tips for marketing and outreach initiatives. So first of all, strongly recommend being thoughtful and research-based and realistic in what you're putting forth. So this is an area where specifics are definitely going to be helpful for them to understand the scope of the marketing and outreach initiatives you're undertaking and who your target audience is that you're really trying to pull in. Again, going back to inclusion, thinking about this as an opportunity to expand your current audience and thinking realistically about what audiences you really want to try to cultivate and have that align with how you're going to spend the funds and the plan you're putting together. We recommend if you're trying to reach the Spanish speaking population in Dutchess County, then it would probably make sense to hire somebody who is a part of that group that you're trying to reach to help lead that process, provide input, not just like, hey, emailing someone's like, can we pick your brain, but really just hiring a person, paying them through the grant funds to be able to support the marketing and outreach you're wishing to do. There are a lot of marketing and outreach professionals in our region from all different backgrounds working who have specialized knowledge, information, and training to be able to help with this kind of thing. And then seek input as well from the group that you're trying to reach. And that might be like the first step in your initiative that, you're going to start by doing a little bit of fact finding or research and survey some people about how they receive their information to be able to inform what you're going to do and make sure it's successful. Think about the relevancy of the programming you're trying to reach. So it's great to say we want to reach out to the specific audience, but thinking about, is the work that you're offering to them something that is relevant to their interests, and how can you seek input from them to find out what they want to see, what would they be interested in seeing? Maybe sometimes it's not just about reaching them, but also making sure that the content is what they're interested in as well. And then clearly explain your reasoning for various promotion tools and why they're going to be important to completing the initiative that you're laying out. Okay, so now I'll talk about how the capacity building initiatives are evaluated. And so we have 3 evaluative criteria that are pretty much used throughout all of our grants and funding programs, and they just kind of mean different things depending on the program we're in. So it's artistic merit, impact, and feasibility. You'll see it's the same categories for programmatic support. But for capacity building initiative, for artistic merit, we're thinking about the applicant organization's track record and quality of the programming to be enhanced by the initiative. So for that reason, you'll see on the application, we're asking for work samples or supplemental documents that support the artistic quality of the organization's work. And so this might look like documentation of recent events, your annual report, maybe, images or videos about what you're doing, especially if it's any programs that would directly be enhanced because of this capacity building initiative. Impact. So we're thinking about what's your track record been and what's the potential for the artistic merit being improved because of this initiative. Impact, potential impact of the proposed initiative on residents of and visitors to Dutchess County. Impact on applicant organizations' ability to provide excellent arts and cultural programming. So again, thinking about what's the impact on the public going to be and what's the impact on the organization going to be. Is it likely to strengthen or expand what the organization is able to do? And is it likely to provide residents and visitors to Dutchess County with enhanced arts and cultural programming or more accessible arts and cultural programming? And then feasibility, evidence of planning in place to execute the proposed initiative as described in the application, taking into consideration the budget, timeline, and implementation plans. So does the budget make sense? Does the timeline make sense? Do the key players involved have strong resumes and look competent and capable to complete the project as described? Does it all just seem realistic that this will come to fruition in the way the person writing the application is describing it? And the ability of the applicant to meet evaluation and reporting requirements as described in the guidelines. Some other tips for capacity building initiatives, just some things that generally make them more competitive in our applicant pool. First of all, that they're highly feasible. I think straightforward applications tend to do very well because panelists can wrap their minds around it very quickly and can, if they're able to clearly understand it and articulate it to others on the panel, sometimes it could be a very short conversation where everyone's like, yep, I like this, I want to fund this, and then we move on, and that's a good thing, and those are often the ones that are just highly feasible and look like they're ready to go. Sustainable programs or initiatives, so meaning that the sustainability is built in. Some of the applications or proposals I've seen that have that kind of built in, maybe you're going to be hiring a new development person that's going, very clearly going to be bringing in more income or expanding what the organization is able to do. I would say anything that then is generating some kind of earned or contributed income to the organization and therefore, making the organization more stable, helping to ensure that that work is able to continue. Or that it's launching a new program, it's doing something that then, you're laying out a plan for how this can be continued in the future. Clearly defined goals, so you're very clear within your proposal about what you're trying to achieve, and it seems achievable to the panel. Measurable success, so you've laid out, if you're saying these are our goals, you've kind of indicated how you'll measure if you've met those goals. So for example, if you're doing you're hiring a development person and you want, you're hoping that within this coming year, you're going to be able to submit to, 10 additional grant or funding opportunities than you had in previous years, or you're hoping to bring in X amount of additional donations because you're having a development, person really focused on doing fundraising. Setting some kind of goal for yourself, and then that's your measurable success. Numbers are very helpful for panelists to understand what you're actually trying to achieve. Efforts which increase access to arts and cultural programming. So anything that is clearly going to expand access to arts and cultural programming is going to be competitive and go over well with a review panel. applications from organizations who have clearly defined history and commitment to thoughtfully serving historically underserved communities in Dutchess County. So if your organization has really already been doing that work and is committed to it, and therefore by funding this, we're more likely to serve audiences and impact audiences who are underserved or have less access to arts and cultural programming, that's going to be a competitive capacity building initiative. And contributes positively to the arts and cultural offerings of Dutchess County. Okay, so that's capacity building initiatives. And now we're going to get into programmatic support. And I'll remind you again, if you're eligible for both categories, you are, we welcome you to submit an application to both, but you'll see that there are a couple of eligibility differences that might make you really only eligible for one or the other. So for programmatic support, the objective of this category is to provide support for arts and cultural programming throughout Dutchess County that may have a measurable impact on tourism, engage local residents, and or contribute to the vibrant arts ecosystem. Applications will be considered from partners that have a track record and demonstrate the ability to manage logistics and deadlines effectively. A key component to successful partnerships in this funding program is the ability to report reliable statistics, marketing results, and accurate outcomes. And again, we are so grateful to our partners at Dutchess Tourism for supporting our programmatic support, Dutchess Partners in the Arts program. And of course, to Dutchess County and the Office of the County Executive. So again, this is funding that we're so thrilled to administer on behalf of Dutchess Tourism, and therefore there's a really clear focus on tourism and economic impact of arts and cultural programs. And I think we all know and understand the incredible impact that arts and culture has on our local economy in Dutchess County, in making Dutchess County a destination for people to visit. It's known as an arts destination to many. So we're really seeking those events and programs that have a stated focus on generating a measurable impact on tourism in Dutchess County. Programs must be open to the public and take place in Dutchess County. I'll talk about ticket sales or ticket prices, but I'll say right here, open to the public does not mean free. It just means that can't be like this is for a fundraiser for an organization and you have to buy a $100 ticket to attend, or it's a members only event, or it's something taking place in a school, or it's taking place in like a senior living facility. It's only open to, you know what I mean? Those types of things where it's not open to the general public. If it's open to the general public and they have to buy a ticket, it's still eligible. Successful programs will include stated goals and expected outcomes related to the program's economic impact. So some more key details for programmatic support. The funding request can range from $500 to $5,000. There is no cash match required. So again, you can request anywhere within that range, and you will be awarded either your full request amount or an amount. If you're awarded funds, you'll receive your full request amount or less. I will say for programmatic support, it is an extremely competitive category. We get a ton of applications to this and have limited funds to administer. And so it is likely that you will receive less than the amount you requested for programmatic support. I recommend you request what you need to execute the project or execute whatever part of the project you're trying to with these funds, because we can't give you more than you asked. But and you want to make sure that your project budget is clear and not inflated. But I will say that you're likely to get less than you requested. So just consider that when you're crafting your proposal. Established nonprofit arts organizations or artistic programs that have been in existence for 3 or more years and have a record of success are eligible and encouraged to apply for funding. So same as before, if you are a nonprofit, you just got your nonprofit status, but you've been doing programming for at least 3 years, then you would still be eligible. Individuals and unincorporated groups may apply with an eligible fiscal sponsor for programmatic support. And all expressive artistic disciplines are eligible. This includes, but is not limited to visual, performing, written, digital, traditional, and experimental mediums. So some eligible programmatic support requests, these may include art exhibitions, performances such as concerts and live theater, presentations such as film screenings or readings, arts and or cultural festivals, and other unique experiences and interactive activities that are arts and culturally focused. Who's eligible for programmatic support? All applicants must be registered as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which identify arts and or cultural services as a primary activity in the organization's mission. So same applies here. You must be an arts or cultural organization, and we determine that by looking at the organization's mission. Nonprofit arts and cultural organizations which are incorporated in Dutchess County, have a long-term lease or own a building in Dutchess County, and or organizations which implement significant programming in Dutchess County are eligible to apply. So this means if you're incorporated here, yes, you're eligible. If you are not incorporated, but you own a building, yes, you're eligible. If you're not incorporated here and you don't own a building, but you're doing a significant regular programming in Dutchess County, you are still eligible as long as you are a nonprofit organization. We've had a few of these within the past few years where maybe the organization, a good example of this I'll throw out there is New York Stage and Film for their Powerhouse series. They are not incorporated in our region, but they've been long been doing substantial programming in Dutchess County. And so they are eligible to apply. Unincorporated groups or individuals who are fiscally sponsored by an eligible nonprofit organization may apply. All nonprofits applying must have a board of directors and a board-approved non-discrimination policy. Organizations must have at least 3 years of programming history in order to apply for funding, and applicants must supply proof of nonprofit status with your application. If you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, so and the nonprofit fiscal sponsor is the legal applicant and must meet all eligibility criteria for nonprofits applying. So, the last slide we looked at in the section in the guidelines that goes over, who's eligible, they must meet all of that criteria, have a board, non-discrimination policy, significant programming in Dutchess County or located in Dutchess County. And they are the legal applicant, meaning that the check will be made out to the fiscal sponsor, and then per your letter of agreement with your fiscal sponsor, they will either give you the funds in increments or in one lump sum. It's important to just keep this at the forefront of your mind if you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, because when you're writing your application, you're writing it from it doesn't matter to us who writes the application necessarily, but the legal applicant, it should be written clearly that the nonprofit fiscal sponsor is the legal applicant. You'll answer questions about the applicant as the fiscal sponsor. A fiscal sponsor is a nonprofit organization that agrees to extend its nonprofit status to an individual artist or unincorporated group. The project must take place in Dutchess County, and the sponsored individual or group must be based in Dutchess County. Nonprofit organizations may submit directly and serve as a fiscal sponsor for one additional project. So if you're an organization in Dutchess County and you're already planning to submit your programmatic support application, you are welcome to also fiscally sponsor an individual or an incorporated group, but just one fiscal sponsorship. And then you'll include a letter of agreement signed by the fiscal sponsor on your application. You'll see that document is available for download on our website in the same place where you'll find all the other information for this program, the links to the guidelines, the application, and the letter of agreement, I believe, are just all together on that page. Who is ineligible? Very similar to capacity building initiatives, individuals and unincorporated groups who are not fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit. Public school districts, their components, PTAs, 2- and 4-year public universities and their supporting foundations, New York State agencies and departments, county level government agencies and departments. Entities incorporated as a for-profit, including LLCs, are not eligible to apply or be fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit. You have to be an individual or an unincorporated group in order to be fiscally sponsored. Libraries and social service organizations are not eligible. Units of government agencies are not eligible, and organizations or groups that have not submitted the requisite reports or on prior funded activities to Arts Mid-Hudson. So again, if you're unsure if you have an outstanding report with us, please send an email to grants@artsmidhudson.org so we can check that out for you and make sure you're all up to date. Inclusive programming. So when we're, the same thoughts behind when we talked about inclusive programming for capacity building initiative, first of all Dutchess Partners in the Arts programs must be open to the general public. Again, we're striving towards broad inclusion and true access to arts and cultural programming for all. And so we encourage thoughtful outreach to and efforts to seek input from all groups in our region, and specific outreach and inclusion efforts to underserved audiences. So I'll use similar example to before. If you say in your proposal that this event, that you're trying to reach Spanish-speaking audiences in Dutchess County, or you're trying to reach, you're trying to reach Spanish-speaking audiences in New York City, for example. And if that is the case, because you're trying to bring up, some tourism from the city to your event, and you're specifically trying to reach Spanish-speaking audiences, that then you're thinking about those outreach efforts as very targeted towards that group, that you're considering if you're going to translate things into Spanish, that you're factoring that into your planning and in your budgeting. When panelists read proposals where those ideas they're kind of thrown out there as ideas instead of plans, it can be less successful and really detract from your proposal. So I strongly recommend, when you're talking about reaching out to specific audiences, that you back that up with very clear plans on how you're going to do that. And again, I won't read this again. It's in our guidelines. We take a very broad definition of all of the different groups in our region who may be underserved by arts programming or have limited access to arts programming, or may just not see their point of view regularly represented in our region. And of course, everything is open to everyone. And you might think about then, for specific programming, thinking about what are the groups that you really want to try to reach out to. Maybe you're in a rural area and that's really your focus, is you want to reach out to some other neighboring rural areas. Maybe you're in the rural part of Dutchess County close to Connecticut, and you really want to bring in more audiences from a rural part within Connecticut. Then thinking about what are the best marketing and outreach plans to reach that group, bring them in, and make sure that they're able to participate fully. Okay, priority will be given to activities that take place in locations that are fully compliant with the American Disabilities Act. Priority may also be given to activities that include additional methods to make the arts accessible to audiences, or plan temporary measures necessary to make sites accessible. So for example, say you need to get a temporary ramp to make a building accessible, or you're going to hire a sign language interpreter, or you're going to have large text documents available. We're first of all thinking about that the site is ADA compliant, and then we're also thinking about, are there any additional measures you're taking to further expand accessibility. Some expenses that are priorities for programmatic support. So these are kind of the things that the panel is most interested in funding. First of all, artist fees. I would say whenever a panel sees an application and it's entirely for artist fees, that really makes them happy. That's a really good thing to be asking for from this program. And I would say also, just as much for marketing expenses, because this is a tourism focused funding stream. And marketing expenses are really how you're going to get people there to see the good work that you're doing and see the work that the artists are doing. And so those two are really the most common things that are requested and are successful within the programmatic support category for Dutchess Partners in the Arts. We can also fund, and also have priority fund, consumable art supplies and materials, efforts to increase accessibility to arts programming. So that's something like some of the examples I gave before: temporary ramp, hiring an ASL interpreter. These are the priority expenses. Doesn't mean that if it's not on this list, it's ineligible for funding. We would still fund kind of logistical or administrative expenses, but I would recommend those be a lesser percentage and a higher percentage be going towards some of these listed here. The evaluative criteria for programmatic support. So as I said, same three categories, but they mean slightly different things. So artistic merit, impact, and feasibility. For artistic merit, taking into consideration the program, participating artists, and the applicant's organization track record. So this is really determined through the work samples that you include on the application. Work samples are really important because they are sometimes the only way, if a panelist is not familiar with your work, or the organization's work or the artists involved, that could be the only way that they're getting a sense of the artistic merit. And so work samples are just very critically important to your programmatic support proposal. And depending on your medium, you might consider having a collection of photos or videos. I would say for performing arts, video is really the best way to give them a sense of what you're doing. For videos, you'll see this on the application. We don't recommend videos longer than 3 minutes for several reasons, mainly being that we want it to load very quickly on the end for the panelists so that nobody gets frustrated and is unable to watch it. Okay, so that's artistic merit, and that's really your description in your narrative, in the proposal, and the work samples. Impact, so the potential impact of the proposed programs on tourism within Dutchess County and impact on access to arts and cultural programming for Dutchess County residents, so that there's an impact, this is very focused on tourism, but we also like to see that there's an impact for Dutchess County residents. And you can also, they might consider there as well, the impact for the artists involved. I think many panelists take that into account as well. Feasibility, evidence of planning in place to execute the proposed activities as described in the application, taking into consideration the budget, timeline, implementation plans. So again, the budget makes sense, timeline makes sense. Key people involved have the expertise to see out the project as described. And that it just seems realistic that it's going to happen in the way that the proposal is written. And then ability of the applicant to meet evaluation and reporting requirements. I have a couple additional slides about this coming up, but really that's about making it clear that you're going to be able to deliver on the quarterly reports. And so that might mean, we're going to be selling concert tickets for our series of concerts. And anytime somebody buys a ticket, it records their zip code. And then we have that information and can, put it together in a way that we can report back. So kind of just like clearly stating how you're able to gather the information that's going to be asked of you will be very helpful. And they'll be considering that when they're reviewing. Okay, so what makes a programmatic support request competitive? Positive impact on tourism and impact on Dutchess County residents. That's really the foremost thing, that the panel is sensing that this is going to have an impact on bringing people to our region and providing excellent arts and cultural programming to those of us that are in Dutchess County. Track record and commitment of organization to reach underserved audiences through thoughtful outreach and relevant programming. And so, the organization has a track record of serving underserved audiences or uplifting and presenting underrepresented artists, and that this is going to be another foray into that, and will, so you're kind of coming in with an advantage because you've already demonstrated your ability to do this. Strong marketing and promotion plan. This is really important because it's tourism focused funding stream. So clearly that your clear plans around marketing and promotion that are likely to yield the results you're describing, that they're likely to reach the people you're saying you want to reach in the proposal. Then, as we've said a couple times, ability to monitor and report on program goals, outcomes, and attendance. All right, so now I'll talk a little bit about submitting an application and we will wrap up. Again, all proposals are due Thursday, April 4th at 11:59 p.m. on our online application portal, which is on Submittable. So we use Submittable. When you go to Submittable, it'll ask you to either log in to your existing account or create an account. And once you have an account, your account is with Submittable. We don't have access to the back end of your account. I can't see your draft as you're working on it. It's all within your account. But what's great about that is you can save, come back to it, and then you can access it anytime. Once you've submitted, you have all of them recorded. You can download a really clean, nice looking PDF of what you submitted. So I really recommend, if you're planning to apply to this program, get your account set up with Submittable, look at the application on Submittable, and make sure that you're understanding the scope of what's going to be asked of you. If you require any assistance in completing the online submission form, we're happy to walk you through any aspect of the application. Just reach out to us with as much time in advance of the deadline as possible. And again, all of our materials for this program are available on our website. You're going to be asked to include on the application a staff list, board list, your organization's annual budget for your most recent fiscal year, and nonprofit and financial documents based on your organization's gross annual revenue. So this might be familiar to you that depending on how what your gross annual revenue is, we're either going to ask for just a 990 or just a 990 EZ, and the higher up your revenue is, we'll probably be asking for an independent public accountant's opinion or an audit. And so you'll just upload those documents there. There's a little chart with that within our guidelines and in the application to show you what you need to submit based on your gross annual revenue. And then supplemental materials, you'll see that they are optional. I'm starting to think for next year, I don't want to make any work samples optional anymore because they really shouldn't be. They are strongly, strongly recommended. I would say for some capacity building initiatives, maybe you might have fewer work samples, but it doesn't hurt just to include as many visual examples as possible so that the panel can get a sense of the track record and scope of what your organization does. All applications are available on our website. I'm going to go to that at the end, actually, so I'll skip that for now. Just some general application tips. So I recommend answering all the questions directly and succinctly. For anyone listening, we do an annual grant writing workshop where we just kind of go in more general tips about putting together a grant or a funding proposal application. And so this is kind of like the distilled version of that. I'd encourage any of you to look out for that professional development workshop if you're interested and attend in the future. But my first tip is directly and succinctly. They're going to be reading a lot of applications. You want to make sure that your responses are brief, to the point, and contain the details that they need to understand the scope of what you're doing. I recommend really thinking about what is your topic sentence. What is the first sentence or a couple of sentences for each response? And they should really be summarizing the scope of the rest of your answer, just kind of like defining, for example, for your application, you're going to be asked for either a description of the initiative for capacity building initiatives or a description of the project for programmatic support. I recommend starting off with, we are requesting this much funding to do this initiative at this location with these artists involved on this date, and kind of really clearly going through the who, what, when, where, why, so that the panel then can say, okay, I have digested what this is in a nutshell. What is the elevator speech of this project or initiative? And then everything that follows supports what they've read. And that's kind of being direct and succinct in what you're providing. Provide specifics to understand the scope of the projects and depth of planning. So while being as direct and succinct as possible, still you want to provide specifics as needed to make sure that the panel understands the scope of what you're doing. I would say especially within marketing and outreach plans, that's a really good place to be quite specific. Keep the panel focused on your ideas by providing complete information. So anytime, and I wonder when we're getting to our slide about, we're getting to, sorry to skip ahead, we're getting to peer panel review, but the panel is made up of people who work in arts and culture, are artists, very active community members. The panel changes every year and it's a group of volunteers in Dutchess County. But if they're reading the application and they say, they never said what the ticket price is, or they never said, they alluded in one place that they would have a pay what you can program, but then they never describe it. They never explain later, or they say they're going to have comp tickets, but they never say for who. If there's a little detail like that missing, and sometimes it's hard for you to know what that detail is when you're writing, that's why it's good to get outside feedback. But if there's a little detail like that missing, then they're going to waste time looking for it. And they're going to get distracted from talking about the good parts of your application, instead be trying to just look for one little tidbit that they can't find. So you want to present direct, organized, chronological, and complete information so that they're following a very clear project plan, and they're not getting distracted looking for little bits of information. In that same vein, write for someone who knows nothing about you or the project. You don't want to make any assumptions about what they know about you, because there may be some panelists who are very familiar with your organization's work. There will be some who have never heard of you before, and you're kind of writing to those first. so that they get a sense of what you're doing. And really, again, this is something that it can be hard for us when we're writing. We know what we know, but we don't, sometimes it's hard to understand all the things we need to make clear to others. It's great to get feedback from a trusted colleague or friend, some feedback from us. And even if you've been working with me, for example, for a number of years to get feedback, I would recommend working with Vanessa this year, because I might have a little bit of, I remember your project from previous years and I'm making assumptions as well, right? Okay, show evidence of the evaluative criteria, relate to the language in the guidelines, and in any materials that you're seeing from us, because the panelists are going to prepare for the reviewing the applications by reading the same guidelines that you all have access to now. They're going to be looking for stuff that aligns with what they've prepared for by reading the guidelines. So if you're relaying to that, you're making it clear that you are meeting one of the goals that we've laid out, or you're helping us meet that goal. You're clearly in line with the priorities and you understand that. You're helping connect the dots for the panel and understand the true impact of what you're doing and how it all fits into all the great arts and cultural programs that we're going to fund this year. Some tips about the budget. I strongly recommend either working on the budget first or working on them, the narrative and the budget together. I recommend working on the budget first because I think it acts as a little bit of a roadmap for the rest of the application. If you know what your expenses are, what you need the funding for, that should really be the focus of what you're asking. Focusing in on clearly stating, these are my expenses and this is what I need funding for. It's never a good thing for the panel to read through your narrative. You'll see when you look at the application how it's structured, there's you're describing the event before you give us the budget. They shouldn't get to the budget and be surprised about something they see there, because then that means that the core of what you're asking for is not well supported in the narrative. A common one, and I'll use this example, is documentation of an event. If we get, if they read a whole application, they're all excited about this event that's going to happen, and they get to the budget, and more than half the budget is just for documenting the event, and it's never been stated elsewhere that you're planning to do that. There's no clear plans on how you're going to do that or who's going to be doing that. And then that aside, I would say, majority of funding for documenting an event would not be a competitive ask. But if that's not supported anywhere, then they're going to get to that and be surprised, and it's going to confuse them. They're going to be then going back and looking. That would be not submitting complete information. They're going to go back and kind of look for the reasoning why you need this and why it's relevant to the project. Work on them together or work on them side by side, and always check for consistency. As you're working, you might at first have estimated that 200 people are going to attend your event. And then as you work, you're like, well, we're really doing a lot more marketing for this. I think it would actually be 400. So you go and change it to 400 in one place. Then you want to make sure you've changed it everywhere, do a little quick find, make sure it's everywhere on the application. Make sure if you put on your budget, for example, you were going to sell 200 tickets, change that to 400 tickets, right? And on the budget, you'll see that there are really two columns to fill out, the explanation column and the number, the dollar amount for that line item. So it might look something like artist fee, and then say you're asking for $5,000, all for artist fees. You want to have something in the explanation column saying how you got to $5,000. So that would say something like $1,000 to 5 artists, five artists at $1,000 each, for example, or 2 artists at $2,500 each. Or, this group, which has 3 members, is going to be paid $1,500 and everyone else will be paid $500, right? Check the guidelines for priority and ineligible expenses. In the guidelines, we have a list of expenses that are not eligible for funding. So please double check that list and compare it to your budget. And any time, ask us to review a draft of your budget. Okay, peer panel review. And I've given a lot of background information getting into this, but I'll give the full scope of how our review process works now. All submitted proposals are reviewed using a peer panel evaluation process. Panelists include artists, arts workers, and community members who evaluate grant proposals and recommend a level of funding. There are new and returning panelists every year. And so this is something I encourage you all to keep an eye on when you're applying to funding opportunities. If you know for Arts Mid-Hudson, you'll know now for Arts Mid-Hudson, our review panels change every year. It's not one group of people that's always there and always rendering very similar decisions. The decisions change from year to year. So that means, if you've gotten funding in the past, it doesn't necessarily guarantee funding this year. And if you have been denied in the past, this could be the year that it works. It works. It all just comes together for that panel. And so I really encourage applicants to continue to submit to our programs because different points of view on the panel every year. Arts Mid-Hudson staff and board members do not have a vote in this process. Myself, Vanessa, and Melissa, our executive director, if she's back, will be there to facilitate the conversation, guide the conversation, but we don't have a vote in the process. Panelists have access to information on previously funded projects. So if they want information on what what was in the final report from previous years, for example, we'll provide that to them. If you or someone would make a great panelist, we have a panelist nomination form. It's listed on our website. It's also it's listed here as well. I would say if you're, you feel free to put yourself on there, but obviously if you're applying now, we're not going to ask you for this go around, but it's great that we'll have you in mind for the future or for another program this year. Okay. I think this will be my last bit here, talking about the responsibilities of awardees. So just want to run through really quickly. If you apply, what are the reporting responsibilities? First of all reports are made on Submittable. So you'll submit them using that same account that you create on Submittable. For capacity building initiatives only, there will be an interim report, which is really just a paragraph updating us on how your project is going, if anything major has changed. It's due about midway through the funding period. Programmatic support, you'll be asked to provide quarterly reports. This includes a short paragraph like with the interim, just describing what projects, what events have taken place within that quarter. And then you'll be asked to provide numbers on attendance by zip code and revenue per event. This is something that we are really looking for specific numbers. We're not really looking for estimated numbers unless you have no choice for that event or the nature of that event to provide some estimation, but it really should be as close to a true way of recording that information as possible. Have tips for that on the next slide. And then final report, all awardees. So everybody will do a final report. If you get both streams of funding, you'll have to submit 2 final reports for capacity building and programmatic support. So it's a longer narrative form where you'll provide a few answers to a few questions on the success of your program, statistics, areas of improvement. It'll be due at the conclusion of the funding period, and it'll include a final budget explaining how funds were spent. We get asked a lot if we ask for receipts. We do not ask for receipts on the final report, but I recommend keeping all of those organized and together. We do reserve the right to request them if needed. I have not had to request them in almost 8 years working here, knock on wood. So I hope it's really only if there's a major problem that we would be requesting receipts. Okay, and then measurement of goals. So we talked a lot about setting goals, tracking success, being able to submit strong reports if you receive funding. So these are tracking zip codes, surveying impact on local economy, talking about how your organization was impacted. So maybe an increase in membership, increase on your mailing list, increase in social media activity or following. And for capacity building initiatives, and I would say for both, it can really be qualitative or quantitative. You can be looking at specific statistics or kind of talking about anecdotal information, feedback from your attendees or neighbors in the area. So we really recommend developing a plan to track this and include that information on the application. There's a specific question that we'll ask, how will you track the success of your project or initiative? So that would be the place to describe this. It might be, we're going to do a survey at the end of each program, and we're going to ask, for their zip code, if they got dinner before or after the event, if they, stuff that is going to help you be able to say, okay, 70% of our respondents got dinner before this event. And that's a very clear economic impact. They may not have gone out to go get dinner and a show, for example, if the event was not occurring. So we're really interested to hear that kind of statistics information about your audience, about economic impact, and about where your audience is coming from. It could be, again, tracking where tickets are sold to, having a survey filled out at or after the event, or having a volunteer go around and asking people at the event. Okay, some final tips before we wrap up. First step, so if you need a fiscal sponsor, I recommend jumping on that right away. They can sometimes need board approval. You need to go through, they will be taking financial responsibility for the project. So that is something that can't really be done overnight. Review the online application form and the guidelines, look through those fully before you start working. I like to, when I'm starting a new grant application myself, I like to print out the guidelines and just highlight anything that really sticks out to me or make notes of anything that I think will be helpful for me while I'm working. Organize digital copies of all your required attachments, and further, I would just upload those first. If you know you have to upload these attachments, just get them uploaded as soon as possible so you're not worrying about that at the last minute. And at any point, make an appointment with Arts Mid-Hudson to receive support. Our Zoom Q&A session is here. We have basically, weekly or bi-weekly Q&A sessions coming up. Again, once you sign up, if you're here today, you're already going to be receiving reminders and are welcome to attend any of these. And you can see this list on our website and on the sign-up form as well. And again, I've been Lilia Perez. I'm the grants manager. Vanessa Capuccio Bear is our outreach and administrative assistant. Thank you so much for being here and watching this information session. You can reach both of us at grants@artsmidhudson.org or at 845-454-3222. I am going to actually excuse my scrubbing back, but I do want to just go. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I just want to share where to find things on our website very briefly, and then we'll wrap up. Okay, so this is our website, artsmidhudson.org. You're going to be looking for grants and artist opportunities, grants and funding. And then we have all of our programs listed here. You're looking for Dutchess Partners in the Arts, learn more. And then you'll see all of the information, download the guidelines, link to the application, link to that, download that letter of agreement for fiscal sponsorship that we talked about before. This is the RSVP link for the info session and the Q&A sessions. You'll see a link to the YouTube video here soon if you're here today and you want to watch this again or go back. Q&A session, and you can also see a list of our previously funded applicants or awardees. And I will stop share. Thank you so much for being here today and for your interest in this program. And also just really, I know this is a lot of work. It's a lot to sit in on this session and then to put together the proposal. We all really appreciate your work that you're doing, not only on this proposal, but for the arts and cultural offerings in our region. So thank you for your work, and we are here to help. So do not hesitate to reach out to us.